argument took another twist. After all Peter's done for me, it's only fitting that I not leave him in the lurch when I move to Chesapeake Shores. Come to Dublin, where you'll be making at least twice the tips and have the support of a man who's been nothing short of an angel to me. He'd be the same for you. It could be the sort of partnership your life's been lacking." Kiera noted with some amusement that Moira hadn't suggested romance, a word her daughter knew well would have sent Kiera fleeing in the opposite direction. "He has his own children to step in and help with the running of the pub," Kiera had protested, even though much of what her daughter said made sense. The prospect of starting over, though, was a scary business. As harsh and difficult as her life had been, it was a niche in which she felt comfortable. With children to support on her own, she'd stopped taking chances. Moira was exactly right about that. She'd put her family first. Wasn't that what a mother was meant to do? The thought of taking a daring risk now was beyond terrifying and yet, perhaps, just a little intriguing. "His sons have little interest in the pub, much to Peter's dismay," Moira said. "There will be a room for you. Peter will welcome the help and the company. If you ask me, he's been a wee bit lonely since his wife's passing." Persuaded at last, or perhaps simply worn down, Kiera had made the move, but only after telling Peter very, very firmly that he was not to be having expectations of a personal nature where she was concerned. He'd agreed to her terms, but there'd been a smile on his lips and a spark in his blue eyes that she probably shouldn't have ignored. And there he'd been, day in and day out for the better part of 2 years, always with a quick-witted comment that made her laugh or a gesture that softened her heart. And his patience truly had been a revelation to her. He'd done not one single thing to make her feel rushed, to make her put up her well-honed guard. Nor was he one to overindulge in Guinness, a habit that would have sent Kiera running even faster after living with Sean's uncontrolled bouts of drinking and subsequent abusive talk. And so eventually, one by one, her defenses fell. She found herself looking forward to their late-night talks after the pub closed, to his interest in her opinions. Maybe most of all, she'd basked in his kind and steady company that made her feel secure, as she hadn't since the very earliest days of her marriage to Sean Malone. She'd last felt that way before Sean's drinking had started, before he'd walked out the door of their home for the very last time, leaving her with 2 sons who were not yet ready to start school and a daughter just home from the hospital. Because she'd made such a show of rebellion in marrying Sean in the first place, Kiera hadn't allowed herself to go running home to her parents back then. Instead, she'd struggled to make do, surviving on her own, if barely. It was only when her mum lay dying that she'd reconciled with her parents and eventually allowed them back into her life and the lives of her children. Her sons and daughter hadn't even been aware that they had grandparents who might dote on them if given the chance. Now, with all 3 of her children grown and finding their own paths, albeit in the case of her sons, a path she wouldn't have chosen, the same one their dad had taken, Kiera had been at loose ends when she made the move back to Dublin. She'd perhaps been more vulnerable than she'd allowed herself to be in years. She couldn't claim that Peter had taken unfair advantage of that. He'd been too fine a man to do so. But the fact was, she'd finally been ready to reach for a little happiness. Peter had offered the promise of that and more. And exactly as Moira had predicted, his sons were happy enough to have her in their father's life and working by his side at the pub. The future looked bright with the sort of promise of love and stability she'd once dreamed of, but never imagined truly finding. And then, on the very day she'd said yes, when she'd opened her heart and allowed Peter to put a ring on her finger, a ring he'd claimed he'd been holding on to for years for just such a glorious day, he'd betrayed her as surely as Sean Malone ever had. He'd suffered a fatal heart attack just hours later, and once again, Kiera was alone and adrift, abandoned. Wasn't that just the way of the bloody world, she thought?